All right, what is up, everybody? Joshua Smith here with another GSD Mode podcast, weekly real estate podcast interview, where every single week I interview top professionals, top real estate professionals, and top badass that they're dominating their space. And today, guys, we got another amazing, epic guest on the podcast today. So our guest today, Carolyn Castillo, and just to give some context before we jump into the interview here. So Carolyn's been in the industry for over 23 years, top real estate agent that specializes in probate and helping, those in a probate situation. She's also a coach. She's been featured on Forbes, NBC, ABC. And the reason why I'm so excited to have Carolyn on the podcast today is, look, probates is one of the biggest niches that I believe that we are going to see over the next probably 20 to 30 years. And I'm sure that you already know these stats, Carolyn, but I just want to make sure everybody else shares them. I've been doing some due diligence and research on this, because I heard not too long ago that 50% of all residential real estate is held by the boomers and the silent generation. So you got 9% held by silent generation, which I think is like 87 plus, and then 41% held by boomers. So that's like, I think, 62 plus. So 50% of all residential real estate held and owned by boomers and silent generation. Then it was followed up that 40% of them, unfortunately, won't be here within 10 years. And then, like, the vast majority will be gone within the next 30. Now, let's put that into context. There is 150 million single family units in the United States. So that's 75 million of them. Then I read a research study by Schwab recently that found that 70% of families that inherit this real estate from, family members that passed away sell it. They don't want to hold on to it. They can't hold on to it, whatever that reason may be. So we're talking, over the next, 20-ish years, about 52 million homes or more that potentially could be hitting the market. So I think that this is going to be the biggest listing wave that we've ever seen, maybe in history, to hit the market. And you are positioned so well, with this. So before we get into probate, though, I'm always just very intrigued in our guest journeys that led them into real estate in the first place. So, like, what did you do prior and what led you here in the first place?
Yeah, so interesting. I got my real estate license when I was 18 years old. And so I'm actually a high school dropout. And my mom said, well, if you're going to drop out of school, you got to go get a job ASAP. And I ended up getting a job working as in a rental office where they were renting apartments. And it was a really fun experience. And then as soon as I turned 18, I went and got my real estate license. And pretty much it's been a journey since then. I learned really early on how to get rental listings. And I pretty much always been a listing agent ever since like day one, pretty much. And, then I had a bunch of kids, got married, did, kind of when you're 18 and you sell a house, you're happy, you sell one couple houses a month, you're good, I just kind of like played around with it, had my children, and then when I got back really into working and getting back into a career, I actually got a job doing phone sales. And I was killing it. If the company would have never left Florida, I probably would have still been there. But they left. And so I was like, wow, what should I do? My husband's like, get back into real estate. And I'm like, you know that it's like 100% commission, right? It's like no paycheck anymore. And he's like, you got this, babe. And so I went out there and I actually started working for the number one Keller Williams office in the state of Florida in my area. And I was their ISA. And so
Okay.
I became their ISA, booking all the appointments for all their listing agents, doing outbound dialing, cold calling for sale by owners, expireds, everything. And, after I was there for about a year, I quit on a Friday and on Monday started making calls for myself, and the rest is history. So I've been in the game for a while. And as far as, probates go, I was doing traditional real estate once I started working for myself after I left the Keller Williams group. And I did that just from cold calling. So literally just, calling in neighborhoods, looking for who's interested in selling. And I did that for probably about 5 years. And I was having fun. I was loving it. But I started just kind of getting a little bit, it's almost like you have like 10 bosses, when you're a listing agent for, traditional sellers. So you would just a lot of very customer servicey, and you've got to be like the mayor of the town and all that kind of stuff to really grow and scale. And I got my first probate, and when I got my first probate, I didn't even know what probate was. And I just fell in love with it because it really turned into all about, solving the family's problem that they were in. And the rest was history. After I got my first one, then I just kept going, going, going. And I've been doing probates for about 5 years now. So it's been
Yeah.
a fun journey. Yeah.
Yep, love it. So then, okay, so before we get, because I really want to unpack,
Okay.
probates and going back from, because there's a lot in this industry that don't really understand what they are and what the process is, and
Yes.
but before that, because I mean, you're a machine on the phones. You've been
Yeah.
doing it for a long time. That ISA role, that is such, a can be a very challenging role. And a big obstacle that so many real estate agents have
Yeah.
is, just getting on the phones consistently. Like I
Mm,
always say, like, yeah, like, yeah, it helps tremendously if you have your skill set up, if you know what, but I'm like, even if you suck, if you do enough phone calls, like you're gonna get clientele. But what were some of the, best practices that you learned, or if somebody's coming to you, when you're coaching clients and they're like, hey, I'm just afraid of the phones. I don't know what to do with the phones. I don't like where do they start of just like, what are some keys that you found that allowed you to be so successful with being able to hit the phones consistently, but then hitting them, sticking
mm.
with it?
Yeah. So I always tell people you can't screw this up. Like you literally can't screw this up. So, when people first get on the phone, they're all nervous, it's different like going on a listing appointment, right? Where you're sitting in front of someone doing a whole presentation. But when you're making phone calls, it's just a random stranger on the other phone, and they don't know what you're supposed to say or what you're not supposed to say. Like they do not care. Okay. You're interrupting their day. And the most important thing is, are you thinking about selling a house? So I have, when I was in ISA with them, they had me doing all these programs, so I was in like, they did a lot of coaching for me, which was really nice. But their coach and trainers always wanted me to be like the Mike Ferry way, which was like, how are you doing? Do you know any neighbors, down the street that might be selling, and that style and that approach just never felt right for me. I don't like kind of like beating around the bush to kind of get where we're trying to go here. So I adopted just actually my coach was Fearless Agent. I don't know if you ever heard of
Yeah.
him,
Yep.
Bob Leffler.
Yep. I think he's out of my market, like in Arizona,
Yeah.
Phoenix.
Oh, yeah, he
Yeah. Yep.
is. Yes, he is.
I've
Yes.
never, I've never met him, so I don't want, but I know of him, and I've heard
Yeah.
amazing things about him.
He's amazing. He's old school. And so basically, I trained under him for a few years. And his cold calling script is just so simple and so basic that anybody can do it. And I think that just removing the fear out of it, and just like you're just making a call and you're just asking a simple question, and it's going to be a yes or a no, and that's it, and you move on to the next one. So I think when people really kind of like remove like that, I can't mess this up, like literally, like if you say the totally wrong thing, like the guy hangs up on you, okay, call the next number. And in through that experience, then you start realizing, wow, that's not that hard. And then you just keep going with it and keep going with it.
Yeah, yeah, it's like a 100% nothing to lose, everything to gain,
Exactly.
situation. Yeah, right. Like if they say no, okay, you didn't have the business anyway. If they say yes, okay, it can positively impact your life, their life, and okay. So then, when it comes to probate specifically, like what are the well? Let's first start like again, just like when you said when you stumbled across your first one, you didn't even know what it is. So let's just start there. Like, what is probate?
Yeah, so probate is the legal process of transferring a deceased person's assets over to their heirs. So this is not just houses. This is bank accounts. This is 401ks. This is cars. This is jewelry. Primarily, you're talking about things that have a title or things that have to be transferred from one person's name over to another person's name legally. Okay. A big misconception in probate is they think, oh, if I have a will, then I don't have to go to probate. But it's not true. So the only way you avoid probate is if you have a transfer on death. Some states do have transfer on death when it comes to the real estate. Think about like your bank accounts. If you have a beneficiary listed on your bank account, when you pass away, that beneficiary will automatically get your assets, right? But if you didn't place a beneficiary on your bank account, you're going to have to go through probate in order to be able to get access to that person's bank account. So probate is happening in every state, okay? It's happening everywhere in the world. I always say like it's global, okay? Because excuse me, Millie, okay. Um, so probate basically is global, right? So when I first got into it, number one, I didn't even know what probate was. And then number two, I'm like, is this just like a Florida thing? Like I didn't even realize, but probate is literally life and death. So when people die, there's a business process, there's an administrative process of handling somebody's death. When we think about death, we only think about a funeral, but we don't think about all the business side of somebody dying. And there's a huge business in the death business, right? So we are part of that as servicing and probate. We're basically, working with families that are transitioning through that life crisis.
Yep. Now, so you mentioned, okay, if they have a death certificate or a transfer, whatever you mentioned the certification is, that, okay, that would
Transfer
mean
on
that,
death.
okay, transfer on death maybe wouldn't have to be probate, or if there's certain types of family trust they have to have set up that can,
Avoid probate.
avoid probate. But last time I was doing the stats, and I can't remember, but I mean, it's such a small percentage of the population that have a will, and like you said, a will doesn't avoid, probate, but that has any element of a trust. So I'm
Mhm.
guessing that the vast majority of these go into a probate scenario.
Yeah, no matter how much we want to pre-plan and everybody wants to pre-plan, set up your trust, set up this, set up that, you're always going to have probate. Probate will always exist. We will never be in a world where there is no probate. A lot of people won't set up a trust, particularly people in probate, particularly typically have their homesteaded property, which is their primary residence of the decedent. So somebody that maybe just owns their house and has, less than 10 grand in the bank, they're not going to go set up a trust. They're not going to spend thousands of dollars to set up a trust or to do anything like that. Basically, when they die, they know that their kids or whatnot are going to get their house. What they don't realize is that it's a little bit more complicated, right? Because you have to go through probate. Personally, for me, I like to just give people advice on how to set up your deed properly. So that way, when you do pass away, the deed would just transfer over to your heirs' names, and that effectively will allow somebody to get over probate, right? But if you don't set up your deed right and you don't do a trust, you're going to probate. And it's just, they never stop. So we have a joke in our group, fresh leads weekly.
Yeah. Yeah. So I work a ton of that throughout my career because I'm in, the west side of Phoenix, Arizona, which is the mecca of like all the sun cities, and so it's like everything north of Bell Road, which is the big, kind of main arterial that runs through my city. Everything north of that is 55 plus communities for just miles. I mean, there's
Mm,
I mean, they're like just Sun
for
City
the
Grand is like 9,000 rooftops. And
wow.
now this isn't my joke. This is the joke of clients and people that live there that I've gotten to know really well over the years. Like every time they hear an ambulance, they're like, "Oh, yep, estate sale." Yeah, right. So, but yeah, I mean, you look at it, I mean, we're an aging population, and like I said earlier, I mean, 50% of all real
Gosh,
estate is
not
held.
even aging, it's life and death. It's just the basics. Every
Yeah.
single person's gonna die. You're gonna die, I'm gonna die. We're all gonna die. It sounds morbid, right, to talk about it. But if you get comfortable with the idea, right, and that this is something, especially in real estate, right, for realtors, this is not a trend. Like, this is not like right now, yes, great niche to be in probate. Why? Because no matter if it's a good market or a bad market, right, people are still gonna die. Okay. So it's something that is once you start building this market out for realtors, this space is very dominated by investors. So when you hear about probate, if you Google probate or you look at probate training, what you're going to find is investors, investors, investors. And why do they like probates? Because they have a lot of problems, they have a lot of issues, and people just want to say, get rid of the house. So there's this really beautiful moment, I believe, right now that is calling real estate professionals to come to find this niche that they can actually provide quality service so the families don't have to sell to investors. They can work with someone that specializes in this. And guess what? In the good market that we just left, I mean, shoot, I couldn't put listings up fast enough, right? It gave us a lot of time. Now I'm having to spend more time on my listings, right? Servicing them and keeping up with them because they're not selling as fast. But in a good market, I mean, poof, it was amazing, you know? And guess what? In a bad market, people are still dying. Families still need help and they don't want to keep these houses. They need to be sold, you know? So it's a great opportunity for realtors that want to really find something that they can just like a buildable skill that they can do year after year. And it's really like you can just build out a cornerstone in your market, you know, where you know you figure out. I teach people how to get the deal. You know, I teach them in less than 30 days. You're in my group. I'm gonna teach you how to cold call, and you're gonna book your first deal. Like, I mean, it's like this, you know. But then you're going to start realizing, how do I help these people? How do I service their problems? And that's where it really gets big, and depends on how big you want to go in probate, how much you want to service, you know?
Yeah. So then, okay. So first follow-up question that I have just really quickly for you. I never even thought about it until you brought it up. But when you said set the deed correctly, I'm guessing that just means, okay, whatever family members that you want to inherit the property, that you have them added to the deed.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just a quick, title company
Yeah,
ad.
you're gonna check with your state to see specifically. So like here in Florida, we have what's called a ladybird deed, or it's also called an enhanced life estate deed. And so basically that's a deed where you can basically say, when I pass away, this property is gonna transfer to this person's name. It doesn't affect refinances. It doesn't have any accountability. Like, because if you add somebody's name to your deed, like if it's Carolyn and Joshua on a deed, now if they do any kind of credit search on me or they do anything like that, they're going to see that I own this property, right? So you don't want it to be where you jointly own a property with someone. You want to be where it just transfers upon your death.
Okay. Yep. Okay. Perfect. So then, and I know that we don't have time because it would take, I don't know, hours upon hours for, to walk through the whole process of exactly what, how to do all this stuff. But I found, okay, kind of when we know what to do, then we can figure out the how, right? So kind of focusing on that of like, before we get into, okay, how do you reach these people? Do you get in with attorneys or do you cold call? And, what are essential things that, hey, if you're going to get in this niche and if you want to do it successfully, like, okay, if I have somebody coming to me that wants to get into REO foreclosures, okay, there's different steps, different processes that you need to have awareness of there, just like short sales. I'm guessing those exist with probate. Like, what are the things that they need to make sure that they have awareness of to make sure that they're set up when they're jumping in this niche?
Number one, I would say the probate laws for your state. So, you know, doing your due diligence, especially now with ChatGPT and Manus, and, you know, even before using all these tools, you could just go to Google and you can just say probate process in my state, you know. And I always recommend looking at about 10 attorneys' websites, because they're not all created equally. Just like realtors, everybody has a different approach, everybody has a different way. And really just familiarizing yourself on what is the probate process, because probate is a legal process, right? Same as foreclosures, same as short sales, right? So it's not like traditional sales where it's like, oh, I want to sell my house, I just put it for sale and then that's it, we sell the house. No, there's a legal process that it has to go through. So you as the professional, that's something that you really need to kind of educate yourself on lightly. You don't have to be, super deep on this, but you want to have a general idea of what the actual process is.
Yep. Yep. Okay. So then when it comes to probates, like anytime I bring this up, most realtors will ask me, well, how do I get in with the attorneys?
Yeah.
Is so number one, is that the only way to get them?
No.
And okay. So do you develop relationships with attorneys? Is that part of
Yes.
okay.
Yes, but the way that I started was cold calling, and I still do that today. Cold calling is just picking the vines off of the tree, picking the cherries off the tree. You know, these are people that why this makes it such a good cold call is because you have the data, right? So probate is a public announcement, right? It's public information. So that's why all the state law attorneys say set up a trust because it's private, right? So probate is on the court records. So you go on there, you can look who's in probate. So because it's a public record, we can get a list, right? Just the same as foreclosures. You know, when someone goes into pre-foreclosure, we can get a list, right, of everybody that went into pre-foreclosure. So there's a list that you can get, and then you can reach out to these people directly and offer your services and see if they are thinking about selling the property in the estate. That's for me. That's what I came from cold calling. That's my background, you know. I had done tons of expireds for sale by owners, all that kind of stuff. So I'm very like familiar with cold calling to get business. And this type of cold call is like no pressure. Like there's no, like, you're not convincing anyone. It's not like, why you're better or anything like that. It's just basic information. I see that you recently filed probate. I wanted to find out if the family might be considering selling the property in the estate. It's a yes or a no, right? And people will tell you, "Oh yeah, we're definitely selling the house." Or no, I'm not. I'm going to live here, Like they're going to tell you straight up what they're going to do. And then from there, you book an appointment with them and you go from there. So it's a really easy like lead to just engage with, on your own.
Yeah, yeah. And would you, with your experience, do you, because there's always survey studies that are done. I always am like, well, how do they do them? How do they track it? How do they get the data? But Schwab's study, shows that 70% end up selling, the estate, right? They don't hold on to it. Is that kind of your experience too?
Oh yeah, 100%. I would say 50% sell right away, like within, when I say right away, probably within the first 6 months, right? And then probably that other 20% that they said 70%, that other 20% is like widows, so that's spouses and things like that. Those typically transact after a year. So if you call somebody where their husband or wife passed away, they're going to probably tell you no, they're not thinking about selling because that's their home too. But then after that 1 year of, taking care of the yard and fixing the toilet and doing this and doing that, that widow is going to say, you know what, this house is too big. I can't take care of the yard. I'm going to downsize and move near my kids. And then that's where you'll see, that's also why I love probate because it's a long, like, there's so many ways, like the leads are not even the leads keep recycling themselves, because even when you go out of probate, now you just have an elevated list of people that that inherited a property. And so you can just hit them up on a cold call down the road, like, hey, I just wanted to find out if you might be thinking about selling. Now somebody may be doing that as a cold call and they don't even realize that that person actually inherited the property. But if you're working probates, you have that dynamic data to know that those people, recently inherited.
Yeah. So okay. So most of your business is coming from you, just your direct reach outs, which I love because I'm all about. I want to do activities where my fate is in my own control. I don't want to be reliant on attorneys sending me business. I always look at that as kind of like icing on the cake. But then
Mhm.
if somebody's wanting to get into that side of the business as well, like what have you found to work good, like for reaching out to these attorneys, and developing that relationship over time?
That's the key, what you said, developing the relationship over time, right? And so it's probate, the cold calling is going to get you the deal today. You can make a cold call today, book an appointment tomorrow, and have a listing agreement signed on Friday. That's why I love cold calls, and I don't see myself ever kind of getting away from it just because it's such a quick hit. But with the attorneys, there's a couple things there, right? So attorneys, they want somebody that has experience, right? Like they want to work with someone. If you're just getting into probates and you've never done a probate deal, right? And the attorney, the last thing that they want to do is they want to work with someone that now they've got two people they have to babysit, the executor and the realtor, right? So the value that you actually bring to the attorney is by kind of lessening the burden for them, right? Like kind of taking some of that heavy loading off of their plate. And now you become an asset to the attorney, not like another person that they have to school and tell them how to do everything, you know? And, from my experience, I've tried a lot of things with those attorneys, like cold calling them, reaching out to a state specific, emailing them. But really what I found that works the best is just that relationship building, where you just, take some time, maybe you can throw them a deal, you reach out to the estate that they're working on, take them out to coffee, take them out to lunch, kind of just nurture that relationship. So recently here locally where I am, I just started a networking group. And this is a networking group for death care professionals. So we have everybody in there from funeral homes to insurance brokers, to estate planning attorneys, hospice, like kind of just like everybody that works kind of in that, service industry around people passing away. And that's been a really neat way to connect with attorneys because it's like, hey, come check out my networking group, right? Instead of like, hey, come give me your business. So in that networking group, they can come, they can connect with others, they can connect with me, and we just kind of, are developing that relationship.
Yeah. Yeah. Now the networking group, is it just the professionals, or are you like, is it like kind of like a seminar where you're putting on to families?
Well, interesting you should mention that. So we've been 1 year, so we just celebrated 1 year of our networking group. So right now it's just been professionals. So it's everybody that I had kind of mentioned, and we're all getting together to honestly understand what each other does. Because I do everything with probate real estate, but honestly, I don't really know much about funerals. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know about hospice, I don't know about financial planning and the when the death claims on insurance policies and things like that. Like, so I work with the probate family and that's what I'm doing, but simultaneously while they're working with me, they just planned a funeral, they just hired an attorney, they now have to do estate taxes, they now have to do all this. So when you really look at the whole industry as a whole, it's very layered. A family's not working with one person. They have to work with multiple professionals to kind of do everything that needs to be done. So the idea of the networking group was, hey, let's all get together and just first learn what the heck we all do. And so now we effectively did that over this last year. And now we have goals to now start hosting community events. So we're basically, we have three sections. We're going to do a planning section, all like a planning panel of estate planning, financial planning, funeral planning, just pre-planning, all of that. Because when you work in the death care space, you become a natural advocate for the pre-planning. If you ask a funeral director, like, when do people like get a funeral plan? Like, do you have a funeral plan, Josh?
I do not.
Neither do I, okay? But when does somebody do it, right? When does somebody do it? Well, what we found out is that people do it after they just planned a funeral for somebody else. And they say, I don't want my loved ones to have to ever do that again. So it's so crazy how that whole, post administration side of the death care then turns into pre planning on the other side, and then turns into aging senior. Now you're actually getting old, right? And now you've actually had to go through all this senior stuff eventually in hospice, and then you eventually cross over. And it's just this thing that just keeps spinning over and over. So now we decided that we're going to start hosting public events where the community can come in and kind of get this deep dive of what we've uncovered as a group.
Yeah. Love it. So then, yeah, what's so cool about that is, now you're essentially doing 20 presentations, one presentation to 20 people,
Hmm.
right? Where it's just, it's like doing 30 listing presentations, but all at the same time. And okay, so then when it comes to, cold calling with these, because, and again, this could be a state to state different thing. I've only ever sold real estate in Arizona, but to my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, because you're the expert here, is that the executor is the one that kind of chooses who the real estate agent's going to be.
Yes.
But the family, like I've never targeted probate as a niche, but through just, calling absentee owners, like just mass, circle prospect, like I've got them, but on accident.
Mhm.
But what I've discovered in again, I haven't done a ton, none of the volume that you've done, because for me, it's all just been stumbled across without intention, but is that the family has a ton of weight with who, like if they go to the executor saying, hey, we've got a family realtor, we have an amazing realtor, we want to use them. Yeah, I think a lot of people think that, oh, it's out of the family's hands, but from my experience, that's not the case.
Yeah, so that's something that really is different about probate real estate versus traditional real estate. In traditional real estate, you just have a husband and wife, right? Or maybe one person. But in probate, you have a whole family. So if you could even believe it, I'm doing my biggest case right now of 23 beneficiaries. Just wrap your mind around that, John.
Yeah, they give kids, grandkids. Yeah.
So the decedent had 7 children, right? She had 7 children, and then out of that seven, 4 of them have passed away. And out of those 4 people that passed away, one guy had 8 kids, okay? And then so on and so on and so on. So the family tree turned into 23 beneficiaries. So in especially when you're talking about homesteaded property, right, is the primary residence of the decedent in Florida. Now some states are a little bit different, but in Florida, everybody has to sign. So the executor, yes, you're the executor of the estate, but then when you talk about getting, a title and title insurance and stuff like that, then everybody in the family has to sign. So it's very important in probate that when you do a consultation with an executor, you're asking them those pertinent questions, like how many beneficiaries are the estate? Does everybody get along? Do we know where everyone is? Because think about it. What if you have a long lost brother that you haven't talked to in 20 years and now you just became, a real estate owner with this guy, that now you've got to work with in order to be able to sell this property. So, yes, you do have to work with multiple beneficiaries sometimes. Now, some families it's just one person, or it's just a brother and sister, but there are plenty of cases where now the 23 is extreme and that's the highest I've ever had. Most are like 3, 4, things like that.
So you as the realtor, then, are you just updating the executor? Or are you updating all of the beneficiaries?
Most of the time, it's just the executor. However, sometimes you have in families where brothers and sisters aren't getting along, right? And so what happens is they're at a gridlock, and that's really what it means to be a probate realtor. See, if you're just a realtor that's sitting on the side and, okay, well, let me know when you're ready and I'll sell your house, that's just a regular realtor. A probate realtor means that you know the problems that these families are going through and you intervene and you provide solutions. The probate attorneys, they don't get involved in that. The probate attorneys are just there to do the paperwork. They're just there to transfer the assets from the decedent's name over, and all of that weight typically falls on the executor. And the executor, they don't even know what to do. So it really becomes, and that's why investors love these deals, because if they don't have the guidance of kind of how to maneuver through some of this stuff, then guess what ends up happening? They sell to an investor for 50% or less of what the property's actually worth, and then everybody goes home. So it just depends. Most of the time, if the family's getting along, then you just have to deal with the one executor. You will have to get them connected with title and stuff like that to sign at closing. But if families are at odds with each other, then you probably have to work with both people, right? Because they don't want to talk to each other. So you'll have to say, well, I'm not going to sell this house. My brother's a real jerk. I said, well, if I could deal with your brother, and you don't have to talk to your brother, can I help you sell this house? Well, if you can deal with my brother, then that would be fine. Talk to the brother. He's, peaches and cream, and we do the deal, right?
So in a way, it's kind of like dealing with divorce situations where, hey, some
Yes.
of them are great, they're civil, but then sometimes it's like,
Yes.
double listing presentation, double everything. This might be a dumb question, but who chooses the executor?
So it could be named in the will, right? If there was a will and they named an executor, it could be in the will. If there's no will, then basically someone has to come forward.
Okay, so it's not court assigned.
Mm-mm, no.
Okay. Okay.
Mhm.
So usually it's going to be one of the beneficiaries that steps forward. That's going to be the executor. So, because what I was thinking when you were talking about investors just taking this, cash investors, some families I'm sure just want to be done with it. They're going through a ton. They just don't, right. But then, if the executor doesn't have a financial gain or benefit, like they just might,
Let it go.
yeah,
Yeah,
just try to
it
just
pop
get
up
this off their plate.
pop it in, you'll see it in tax liens, you'll see them pop probates pop up in tax liens, like people inherit stuff and sometimes it's just people don't even have the money to file probate, right? And then somebody dies and they have a house but they don't even know what to do, they don't know how to go about it. Those are ones that don't even pop up on our probate list, right? Because they never even filed probate. So, and those are the ones that end up in foreclosure or they end up, in tax liens, and that's where investors definitely, get a hold of them.
So I know a question a lot of people are going to have is like, where do you get this kind of data?
Easy, say less, okay? It's at your public courthouse,
Okay.
okay? Yeah, so it's very easy. Like you said earlier, probate is a uh, public legal proceeding, right? So all the records are online. You'd have to go to some people in some areas, you can actually research the leads online through like online databases. Just depends on your county in your state if they're up with the times. The one that I have here locally, they will give you a printout for the month, a printout. They will not give you an electronic copy. Okay. So it just depends on, your local, cities and counties and things like that. But it's a public record.
Yeah. Yeah. So, okay. So is that, so like, because there's these like subscription companies like Property Radar or PropStream or Super Empower. Do you ever use any of like
Oh
where
yeah. I've used different lead providers throughout my time. And what I found is like the pop streams of the world and like where there's their names are not, I can't think of them right now, but you know what I mean? Like those type
yeah.
of, I'm trying to think, there's one that's blue. It's like I could see the name, but I can't say it. So those ones, what I found with those is I feel like they're a little dated. I don't feel like they're very like my when I get my leads, it's like they filed last week, and I'm getting it, right? So it's always speed to the lead for everything. So the quicker that you can get to them, the better it's going to be, right? So you really want to work with a data provider that's actually like pulling the leads directly from the county and then uploading them and there's providers out there that just do that. But those big box ones where it's like, hey, get our service, you can get probates, pre-foreclosures, tax liens, like, and it's kind of like a map where they all just kind of pop up. Those I haven't found to be as as fresh data.
So okay. So you're not going to the courthouse direct. You have like a local
Hmm.
somebody that's running that data for you, getting it for you weekly. So you're not, and you're just, but it's not like a company that anybody just go pay. It's just something that you're working with privately to get that data.
Right, right. And a lot of people, Josh, in a lot of markets, they have access to this online. So that's what I'm saying. I always encourage everybody to see what they have access to locally because mine doesn't offer it, unfortunately. But a lot of counties of different students that I work with, they just literally make an account with their county courthouse, and all the leads are right there. Florida actually doesn't provide that much information. Whereas other counties, some of my students that I work with, like they literally get the phone number, Josh.
Yeah.
Like the phone number of the executor. Like there's no skip tracing needed, like it's literally right there. North Carolina, I'm like shocked. North Carolina, they post everything, like how much money they have in bank accounts, all the different accounts they have. Like Florida doesn't do that. They'll just post like the proceedings that are happening, but they don't share like that private information. But states like North Carolina, I mean, you'll be shocked at what is in those probate court records.
Yeah. That's crazy. So
Yeah.
then, what is, what are mistakes that you made like when you're starting to work with probate, that you're like, hey, I wish I would have known that, that you've learned, those learning lessons along the way, just so others can, okay, make sure that because I always look at it like, okay, I don't want to say it's easy, but it's easier to figure out what to do. What's very difficult is what to figure out to avoid, what not to do. So we don't have to go through all that pain in those learning lessons.
Yeah, exactly. So one of the biggest things for me, I think, was I didn't even know what probate was, right? A family member never, like, I didn't know anything about probate, right? So, and then I also had maybe in that time, because I hadn't been through too much legal stuff in my life, I didn't have a lot of experience dealing with attorneys, okay? So I always held attorneys at a very high level in my mind, just because I guess it's an attorney,
Yeah.
of course. And then when I realized is that attorneys don't really know as much as you think they know sometimes. And so what would happen to me is like, of course, when you're brand new, you're not going to be very objective and opinionated, right? Because you really don't know what you're doing, right? And so you're kind of following along in the attorney's footsteps. But then when you start getting multiple cases going, and then one attorney is getting things done and another attorney's not. And I'm like, how is this happening? One attorney tells me you can sell it prior to probate being completed. The other attorney tells me it can't be done, right? And I had to figure that out myself as I was dealing with all these different attorneys. Like, people will say to me, well, who's the best attorneys, in town? And I say, well, better question is, what are the attorneys I shouldn't go to, right?
Yeah.
Because, so for me, that was like a big thing, because when people hire a probate attorney, they're typically just like Googling, or it's not like your family attorney that you work with all the time. Like, probate attorneys are transactional. They're not like, building those long relationships a lot of times. So they're just like, people just get them off of Google. And so then you now are the professional that is the probate attorney, is literally pretty much the captain of the ship, right? Because I cannot sell this house until I get court authorization, or until it gets out of probate. I can't sell my house, Josh. So I can do all the best things, but until I get that court approval, or until I get out of probate, I can't sell my house. So really understanding, what that's why I always say, so Google 10 attorney websites, not one, right? Don't listen to what one guy says. Ask 10 guys, and then you'll start finding out that everybody has different opinions on how things should be done and how things can get done. And that for me was like the biggest, is really understanding the process for myself, understanding what truly is possible, and then help advocating that for my clients with whatever attorneys they choose. Right. So now I can get on a phone with an attorney and I can say, hey, well, when do you think we can get the authorization to sell? And he says, oh, well, we can't do nothing until 6 months and blah, 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 blah. And I say, well, do you think it would be possible that we might be able to do this? Right. Because I know what's possible, then he's like, oh, well, yeah, yeah, I guess we can do that. And I'm like, why didn't you say that from the first time, bud?
Yeah.
Like, so I think that alone, that mistake, would save people a lot of time. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. 100%. So then, I had another question I was going to ask you. It'll come back to me. Okay. So then I always look at like making sure people have realistic expectations. Yeah, right. Like I find people will start something for a month. Oh, I didn't get results at that. I stopped. And I know that you mentioned that, okay, like your clients, like within their first month, like they're popping deals or at least getting listings, but what kind of volume does that take? Like what are the, conversion rates, kind of an average of, hey, if I dial 500, I have 50 conversations, I know I'm going to take at least one listing, like what does it kind of break down to for expectations so people know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it really goes a lot with like regular cold calling metrics, to be honest. So it's like, pretty much out of 5 appointments booked, you're looking at getting 1 to 2 listings, you know. With probate at the beginning, I always say like it's easier at the beginning. Because at the beginning, one of the reasons that I love probate leads so much, especially when I first started, was you only get on any given market, you'll probably get maybe anywhere from 15 to 30 leads a week, right? So think about that. Like that is very attainable, right? You get your list for the week. Okay, there's 15 people that are in probate and they have real estate to sell. Like that is very attainable for a realtor to focus on getting in contact with those 15 or 20 people. Okay. Out of those 15 or 20 people, if we believe what the numbers say, 50% of them will sell that house, right? The question is it going to be you that sells the house or is it going to be somebody else, right? So at the beginning, I think it's actually super easy because all you have to do is focus on those few people, right? Where it gets a little bit more challenging, which I think is for any type of cold calling, strategy, right? Is then you start building a pipeline, right? And then that pipeline, you've got the nurtures, right?
Yeah.
So the people are like, yes, I do want to sell. Carolyn, we are selling. Aunt Susie's coming down to get her stuff from the house. This is happening, that is happening, and we'll be ready on this date, right? So now that person's in your pipeline, they're in your follow up, right? Now, next week, you get another 15 people, right? Well, your goal is just to reach those 15 people. And then it just keeps
Yeah.
it keeps getting bigger. And that's where really the skill comes in, is being able to do the daily grind of making contact with those leads and then being diligent in keeping your database followed up, nurtured, keeping up. Because if we're all honest with ourselves, all of us have gone back to our pipeline to make our follow-up calls only to find out that they listed with somebody else, right? Because we didn't follow up when we were supposed to follow up, and we get busy. It's always easy for people when they don't have any deals. It's easy, but once you start cranking, that's when then the balancing act starts, and trying to keep up with it all and the new leads and your nurtures and your current listings and all those things. But as far as like you get a list of leads, you know how to call them, you have the script. Josh, I promise you, you can book a probate deal right
Yeah.
now, live. Okay. Like it's literally that easy. Like it's easy.
Yeah, and you ran through your script earlier, and it just seems like okay, you're very like bottom line up front, like you said. Okay, I'm not a beat around the bush, so it's not a hey, just how you doing, how's it going, like right, like you're not like you're just going right, introduction right into hey, my records indicate that looks like you recently filed probate. Just want to see, what your plans are, excuse me, for the property. I'm curious with this of because look, they just experienced a death, right? Like is like how important is tonality?
Mm,
Right. Even though it's a bottom line up front script, is it really important though to speak with kind of a soft tone, right? A little bit slow. No, doesn't really matter.
just mirror match, you know,
Okay.
just mirror match. If you're talking with somebody that is like you, if I cold called you, you'd be like, yes, this is Josh. Have to I'd have to be like, hey, Josh, this is Carolyn. I'd have to be like, I'd have to match you real quick. But if somebody answers like, hello, then I'm gonna be like, hi, this is Carolyn. So it's just mirroring and matching that energy. I think that in this space, I think that people appreciate the direct approach, you know. I think that they appreciate it. And our script literally just takes you right in. I mean, it's like butter on toast. And this script, by the way, I will tell you, was handcrafted by yours truly, okay, through trial and tribulation, trial and tribulation, trial and tribulation. And I've got it now so dialed in that literally it's just walking down the yellow brick road, you know? There, I already have your hesitations. I already know what people are gonna say. What do we say to overcome it? And then just, follow the yellow brick road. But my cold calls from cold call to book appointment is 5 minutes. It's a 5 minute call.
Yeah, it's funny because like most when they think of scripts, what they're really thinking about is openers, conversation openers. Because then from there, it's like, okay, the script is really just how do we have an effective conversation, to either set an appointment, identify their concerns, overcome their concerns, identify goals, timeline. And it's a little bit of an art, and it takes that time, like you said, of just years of navigating this and doing. I mean, what have you done? Like a million cold calls by this time with your ISA experience,
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So
And I still to this day, so I do live cold calling in my group with my team, and still to this day, I still feel nervous sometimes,
yeah,
like I still like when I ask questions, sometimes I'll close my eyes. Just because I can feel that the guy is gonna karate chop me, you know what I mean? So I'll be like, you could tell like at the beginning when they're very like, oh, who's this? And you get past all that, and then you're about to hit them with why you're really calling, so sometimes I'll just be like, like I'll hold my breath or I'll close my eyes, So it's just about like, pushing through those feelings, and like I said, with the script, I always challenge people like as much as you want to add stuff to it, just don't, just don't. Just take it through, and because all the fluff, nobody really wants to talk to you. Like they're not like they don't want to, you don't need to be all chummy with these people, like this is business. One thing I was going to tell you about the emotional level that you talked about, when people have filed probate, they're ready to do business. Okay. When they filed probate, they've already done the funeral. Okay. They've already done all that. And now they're hiring a probate attorney to do what? To do the business side
yeah,
of the death process. So, as a professional, I think like I've never said, I'm sorry for your loss. I've never said, my condolences. I've never said anything like that. I'm just very professional, straight to the point, and the reality is we're talking to a hungry market, right, Josh? 50%, 70% are gonna sell. So when you're asking them that simple question, is the family considering selling the property in the estate? 50% of the time, what are they gonna say? Yeah.
yes.
That's it. And then from there, you go into perfect. Well, I'd like to schedule an appointment with you. I think da, 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 da. And they're open to it because they want information and they want to understand what that process is. And for realtors specifically, we have a huge opportunity, Josh, because like I said, the only people that are primarily hitting these guys up is investors. And realtors have a totally different game. We have a totally different agenda, right? And so most realtors only would get involved in probate after all the drama is done. Well, if all the drama is done, then you're not a probate realtor because a probate realtor gets involved in that drama and helps the family overcome it. And when they overcome it, that's how they get the business. And it's also a way that I've been able to charge more listing commission than traditional sales. There's also opportunities to get involved in property preparation. My husband does a lot of the work on these, clearing out the houses, cleaning them up, getting it ready for the market, and if you do, we've also bought and sold these, So if you want to buy these, you're sitting at the front table. So as a realtor, instead of just offering the investor option or just offering the listing option, you're in a position where you can say, these are all your options, and how can we serve you? And from a realtor's perspective, our interest is in the best interest of the family,
Yeah.
right? That's our duty, right? And our real estate license, we have to deal honestly and fairly to the public. That's why investors don't get licenses because they don't want to be held to that accountability,
Yeah, and I'd imagine that, like you said, okay, they've already been through the funeral, they're going through all of this different stuff, so then, when you are like the more that you can have kind of a concierge service, like you said, hey, you need repairs, we've got you covered there. You need a trash out, we've got you covered there. You need, an estate sale, like, hey, we have relationships with estate sale companies that can, sell the belongings that you don't want, right? If there's belongings on the property. And okay, so last question on this stuff specifically that I want to get into a little bit about your coaching and what led you there, is So when you're doing these, like, are you doing the listing presentation just the executor, or are you trying to, like, knowing, okay, you might have one decision maker, but there really might be three decision makers, just one on paper. So trying to get all three at that listing presentation.
Very rare, very rare. So you're mostly dealing with the executor
Okay.
only. And a lot of these, so you know how you had your probate jokes at the beginning about the son, everybody had died. I forget what
Oh
he,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah. So there's one here in Florida I gotta share with you. And they call Florida, it's heaven's waiting room.
yeah.
So what happens? Everybody wants to retire in Florida, right? So their families in New York, New Jersey, Chicago, wherever else. Grandpa comes down here, he's retired, buys a condo, buys a house, but the whole family is still in wherever they are. So a lot of these appointments, you never even see the people. I have people mailing me the keys to the property, right? Like a lot of this is done virtually. And that was a huge thing for me when I moved, because I moved from South Florida to North Florida during COVID. And the first 2 years that I moved here, I never even left my house because I was just doing consultations and everything for executors in South Florida. So a lot of this stuff is done over the phone, and it's a lot of more of constructing the whole deal, between the case, the probate attorney, the beneficiaries. The big thing about probate is it's not so much about the house, which sounds funny. It's mostly about the situation. It's mostly about what's happening. And so when you get into that, you realize it's not the traditional way of like going to a listing presentation and bringing this fancy presentation and sharing how you're the mayor of the town. They don't even care. Before I got into probates, it was literally at the same exact time I started with Mike Sherrard, and I got with Mike because I was a secret agent. Okay. I had no website, no YouTube, no Instagram, no Facebook, nothing. And I was doing deals like that. People are not so much in probate, they're working with you on a situational, right? It's not like you have this, whole brand, like, you know what I mean? Like they're just there in the moment. They need help, and you have the solutions for their resources. And they're just like, yes, I'll go with you. Because I guarantee you, once you learn how to be a probate realtor, nobody else is offering them this. People are like, okay, once you figure that out, just give me a call and I'd be happy to sell your house.
Yeah.
Probate realtors, we get involved in the problem, and that's what makes us a probate realtor, you know?
Yeah. Love it. Love it. All right. So then transitioning into, because, like, look, I know that you also train other agents, your agent partners on how to do this. Like, what led to that? Was it just people seeing you having success, sort of picking your brain and
That's exactly what happened. Yeah. So I just like started sharing, because I started with Mike. I got my YouTube channel, I got an Instagram, I started doing all that. And then as I was kind of sharing, my journey on YouTube and stuff, that's where people were like asking a lot of questions about probate. And then I started posting some of my cold calling videos, and then everybody's like, oh my gosh, how do you, because there's not a lot of realtors doing probate, and even for myself, when I went out there trying to learn it, there's literally a handful of people, and they're not doing deals today, right? And I think that there's a big difference between people that are just teaching from like a podium versus that somebody that's actually doing deals.
yeah,
And so that's where I started my own team here in Florida. And so I was training, I literally hand knit probably 10 probate agents by hand, sewing them together. And then that's where, I said, let me go ahead and see if other agents are interested to join in on this, and also creating a network, right? Because like in Florida, probate can be done, probate attorneys can transact throughout the whole state of Florida, right? So you can be in Miami and you could do a probate in Jacksonville, right? And so I was working with attorneys that had different cases. Our team started working in multiple different counties throughout Florida. And so that's where I was like, I would love to just create that Florida network where we have a, probate realtor in every single county, that we can just, create a beautiful referral system just in the state of Florida, you know? And so, yeah, so I put my training course, I recorded all my, because from that point forward, I had just trained everybody one-on-one, 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 one-on-one. And you know how much fun that is. And so then I just hunkered down and I just recorded everything, all my processes from beginning to end, And originally it was just for my home team. So I was like, okay, did you watch the video? Watch the video and then come talk to me. But then now it has expanded into other students around the country that want to learn how to do probate, and I really like it. I've been having a lot of fun doing it.
Yep, yep, love it. So then I know that you're also, as you mentioned, with Mike Sherrard, EXP, and we're both with Mike Sherrard. And here's what I love about this is, EXP recently rolled out co-sponsorship. So, it gives us the ability now, even though, yeah, we're both with Mike Sherrard, but we're in different, we have different
Online.
sponsors, you know, um, so if anybody, decides to join with you, partner with you, add you as their sponsor, they get everything that you offer plus Mike offers. But now through co-sponsorship, it's like, okay, they can choose, you as the sponsor, me as the co-sponsor, or me as the sponsor, you as the co-sponsor. They get Mike Sherrard's all amazing. He's the best in the world at social media, YouTube, AI. You're a rock star at probate. Okay, me more, scaling businesses, building teams, traditional side of the business. But now we have an opportunity for everybody to get all aspects. And I'm curious with with this, is this available primarily just to your agent partners at EXP, or is this something maybe if somebody's not with EXP, they don't want to join, right? I don't know why they wouldn't, but let's just say that that exists. That was me for a lot of years too. Is this something that is available for others outside of EXP to purchase?
Yeah, I am currently doing like a hybrid, so if agents, of course I would love, I mean, it's a great deal, right? Because they get all of our training absolutely free. And they get Mike Sherrard's training and they get your training, right? Like it's unbelievable. Really, I've had to pay for coaches my whole life,
Yeah.
I mean, you know how much money I spent on coaches?
Yeah, I
You know,
know. Yep.
I mean, I've always been with a coach, I've always had a coach throughout my entire career. Real estate companies don't give it to you. Any broker that you go to, EXP is exceptional because they've got all the icon agents doing all the trainings. But, traditional brokerages before I got to EXP, again, it's some like guy from the 80s like telling you how to do real estate, and they're not currently in the market, so I always had to spend that money to go find knowledge and learn how to do something, so that's the crazy thing is that with EXP, that opportunity that they give us, is that you get these amazing coaches. We get to be with Mike Sherrard and learn all the social media and learn all the AI. And that's why I signed up, when I met Mike Sherrard, because I was a secret agent, and he helped me come out of the closet and get a brand and do all of that stuff. And so, that's where, I want to give that opportunity also for agents because I want to grow my EXP downline and I just genuinely want to build the biggest probate real estate network, like honestly, globally. I'm just going to say it, okay? Because it's happening all over the world, and there needs to be more agents that understand this process, that are committed to the process. Like you said, most agents just stumble across probate here and there, just naturally as being an agent. But if you actually master it and you build systems around it and you build solutions for it, I mean, it changed my life. It gave me consistency, it gave me purpose. It's branched off multiple different streams of revenue for me, so it's really been life changing for me getting into probates. But I am basically offering a coaching package that you can buy in, right? If you don't want to sign up for EXP today. And I do have some agents like that that haven't said, yes, I want to sign EXP today. I said, fine, well, then you can just buy into the program and then hopefully I can convince you over the time,
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't want to completely exclude anybody. So, right now I am offering both options. If they sign with me through EXP, they don't have to pay anything, which is an amazing deal. But there is a paid way if you don't want to join EXP right this second.
Yeah. So then, Carolyn, like if somebody's interested in learning more about either option, right? Like where's the best place to get in touch with you? Or if they just, they also want to follow you on, online social, like where the best place to do that at?
Yeah, so I'm absolute top dollar pretty much everywhere. So if you just put absolute top dollar in YouTube or absolute top dollar in Instagram, and then either one of those you can go to, you can click a link to be able to book an appointment with me. And we can kind of deep dive into what you're looking to do, if probate's going to be the right niche for you. And I've been going live on YouTube, so you can catch up. You just want to kind of like get some training on probate. You just want to kind of learn more about probate and just see if this is something that you really want to do. You can have fun on my YouTube channel and we can, collaborate there.
Yep, 1,000%. And then anybody that's watching, listen to this as well. So I'm gonna have a link below. I'll have Carolyn's information, her links below too. Then I'll have a link with my scheduling link as well. Just make sure that if you schedule that link with me, now I always ask you, how'd you hear about us? But if you are wanting to take advantage of that co-sponsorship option, with Carolyn, myself, where you get all Mike Schroard's, amazing coaching training, all my coaching training support, but then Carolyn's all her amazing coaching training support, make sure that you bring up her name or just say, hey, I saw your probate podcast, interested in learning more about that. So we get you set up the right way, because when you sign up at EXP, you choose a sponsor. But then if you want to have, like, let's just say you chose Carolyn as your sponsor. Yeah, you get all Carolyn stuff, get everybody her upline stuff. So Mike Sherrard stuff. No, it gets a little confusing with these terms, but then you wouldn't automatically get my stuff. Yeah, right. But then if you were to add me as your co-sponsor, which you have 5 days to do from when you join to name a co-sponsor, then you also, in addition to that, no extra cost to you, get my coaching support as well. So, yeah, Carolyn, truly appreciate you taking time out of your busy day to be here. This has been a lot of fun, my friend.
Thank you so much, Josh. I enjoyed it.
100%. Those watching, listening, as always, we truly appreciate you. Keep crushing, keep kicking ass, and we will see you next time. Peace.